Welcome to GlideChat, where we give you the rundown of all things ServiceNow. Let's talk about the now, right now.
Hi, I'm John Gilaspy, ServiceNow Certified Technical Architect and Technical Lead of GlideFast Consulting's Integrated Risk Management Center of Excellence. I'm here today with Doug Penta, a fellow IRM Architect. And Doug, tell me a little bit about how you've been doing in ServiceNow. How long have you been doing GRC implementations? How did you get started?
Sure, John. Well, good to be here. So I've been working with ServiceNow platform for about 11 years. It was early 2013. I got started on the platform. I worked for ServiceNow twice. I worked for several partners and a customer as well. So I kind of have the experience from all angles. Specifically with GRC IRM, which is the topic we're going to discuss today, I've been working with it for about since 2015, 2016. So I guess that's about 8 or 9 years now. Crazy to believe how much time it's been. How about you, John?
Yeah, I got started with ServiceNow back in 2010. Was an admin dev for a client before I became a consultant. Got into GRC about 8 years ago, so shortly after you did.
Yeah, John, I know, we've worked on projects over the years. I was working at ServiceNow, working on projects all over the country. And whenever I'd see, you on a project, I kind of look to you actually as kind of the GRC guru, honestly, the best in the country, over the years. And I was always, happy to see that you were on project with me, and I've definitely enjoyed working with you. So it's great that we're here at GlideFast together.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's actually kind of funny because I remember being at Knowledge with you so many years ago. And I think it was one of the first IRM GRC fundamentals courses that I helped teach.
Okay.
But that was when we actually first met, was teaching IRM, I think, at Knowledge so many years ago. And it's been quite a ride since then.
Yep. No, it's definitely, as I said, it's hard to believe how much time has passed, and GRC has just kept growing within ServiceNow. So it's been really exciting to be kind of along with it for the ride, right? And as I said, I've worked for ServiceNow. I've worked with the dev and product teams, and just really helping customers be successful with ServiceNow's GRC IRM.
So let me ask you this: with your experience on both sides of the house, what is it that makes a successful IRM project?
Right. So I would say when we first start a project, this, subject matter is not very familiar to the layperson, right? So oftentimes we're working with risk managers, compliance managers, audit managers, right? And they know their process, right? But we need to make sure when we engage with a client that who's ever involved in getting the right people in the right room, right? That they get the right people in the meetings to do proper, discovery of requirements. So I think that's really important is, first of all, getting the right stakeholders in the room, right, to discuss requirements. And then also just when you have good stakeholders that you're working with, that can certainly make projects go much better. People that you're working with as opposed to them working against you. I find it's really, really important in successful projects. How about you, John? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, communication with the right people is just crucial. And you're right. So many of them have their own processes that they've done for years, oftentimes in other tools. ServiceNow's terminology, its processes are new. Getting the right people into the room from the very beginning, you're right. That's crucial to being successful.
Right. So what I was going to ask you, John, was, what are the challenges of IRM projects? And I think you touched on some there. As you said, terminology, I find is a challenge because we have, these other products out there like RSA Archer, right, and other products that may use a different terminology. And we need sometimes, or these risk compliance teams, audit teams that we're working with may be speaking one language, and ServiceNow, has different terms, different terminology to refer to the same things, right? So we really serve as kind of the interpreter, that sits between the client and their, Jersey processes and ServiceNow, right? And, that's what can make this job challenging. But to be effective in this job really involves us, understanding the client, right? Listening to what their processes are, and then translating them obviously into ServiceNow requirements and getting them stood up within IRM.
Absolutely. You've got the people, the process, and the platform. I think one of the most challenging and interesting discussions that I ever had with a client was more on a conceptual level, and we have to be able to deal with that. We have to understand the industries. We have to understand what our clients are going through.
Right.
The discussion was all around the idea of, can I reach 100% mitigation of risk? And frankly, I don't think you can, because you're dealing with two things. You got people and technology, and both of them tend to fail at certain things unexpectedly.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Would we ever see that level of detail in ServiceNow's risk? Maybe not, but it's an interesting concept because it really goes back to the perspectives of the client and what their headaches are and figuring that out.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I don't think 100% minimization of risk exposure is possible. That's why we have risk management teams, right? And we have to constantly monitor those risks and put controls in place to mitigate those risks, right?
Yep.
One other, another topic I wanted to touch on was this idea of integrated risk management, right? Which, ServiceNow obviously changed the name of their product from, GRC to integrated, risk management, IRM. So, what I've noticed in the last year or two on projects, and I brought this up within our Center of Excellence at GlideFast, right, is this move towards, looking at risks as interconnected, right, and the relationships between them. Because, previously clients would just kind of manage their risks in more siloed environments, right? You have IT, cyber risk. You may have a separate, risk manager for that, right? And then you have enterprise risk, operational risk, all these different types of risks, right? That ultimately you can have, different ways of dealing with those risks, different, risk assessment methodologies, right? But that's just something that I've just noticed on projects, as I said, over the last year or two, clients really moving towards that kind of integrated risk management approach. And what ServiceNow has provided with specifically the advanced risk, functionality is this ability to do integrated risk management, right? Develop a whole sort of top-down approach with risk, from enterprise risk all the way down to low-level risks, right? So it's something, I think we're really excited here at GlideFast about kind of putting this, what I call consultative lens on these projects, right? In terms of how we approach them. And yeah, we've been taking projects from other partners who may have dropped the ball because they didn't really kind of have this understanding, right? And we've been getting clients up and going live with IRM and successful with it. And I think that's something that I'm really excited about with our IRM practice going forward. Anything you wanted to add to that, John? In terms of
totally agree. When you think of processes being siloed, so many entities just live that way. But IRM, if you have the blinders on at the macro level, at that top level, you're essentially blinding yourself to what's really going on. You have to be able to open up and say, well, yes, operational risks are impacted by cyber. Cyber is impacted by ITSM. My help desk personnel, my marketing director, they all present risks, and they all have a certain overlay. And being able to look at it from both perspectives and help your client, who is dealing with that microcosm of their daily life, understand how they impact the company at the macro level is something that I think we actually excel at.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you just mentioned the entity structure, right? I'd say that going back to that question of, what are the challenges, right? I think a lot of clients don't have a real entity structure in place, right? Or some clients at least don't have entities clearly defined within the organization in order to effectively, use ServiceNow's IRM suite. So that can be a challenge initially with the entity scoping, right? Determining, okay, what are your entities? What are those things that you're targeting, for risk controls? and going forward from there. I mean, I've had clients where they're kind of like, look, we haven't, laid out our entity structure yet, but we still need to get them live. So we'll just create one entity and associate all the risk and controls to it. And then they can do the entity mapping themselves a little bit later. So that's just, one thing I'd say that I would add to the challenges is ServiceNow has an architecture, revolving around entity, right? That you need that, right? There's really no way around it. And so looking at some of these, these companies and these organizations, how they're performing their GRC operations, it can be a challenge to get them into ServiceNow if their organization isn't structured like that.
Agreed. Yeah, right. IT is very good at thinking about entities at things. We think of servers, right. We think of the various assets, but when you come to HR and finance, people don't think of processes as entities,
right?
But they are. And if a process fails, then you've got an issue that you have to deal with. So being able to run controls and identify risks inherent to those processes, that's just part and parcel of what ServiceNow allows you to do. Getting
exactly.
people that's key.
Right. Yeah. An operational risk assessment, right? That speaks to those business processes, right? That we do in addition to IT risk assessment and other types of risk assessments that are out there. So advanced risk, the ServiceNow has done a lot to really build on kind of what legacy risk has, right? Yep. And provide a lot more feature and functionality, enabling you to do different types of risk assessment, like you were saying.
Yep. So as we look forward, the Washington DC release is now out. We have clients who are moving into it. Sure. What do you see as the future of IRM, and what is it about the Washington release that really excites you?
Right. So I took a look at the release notes for Washington and what's coming up within IRM, and specifically what I was most excited about, I guess you could say, is what's coming up with advanced risk, right? Because as I said, these projects I've been working on the last year or so have really defined a need for some of these features and functionality that advanced risk offers to enable you to do integrated risk management. So one of them is parallel review and feedback in advanced risk. This is basically this ability to allow second and third line risk managers to become more active participants in workflows within risk management. And it just basically provides ability for them to kind of put comments in and continue to monitor a risk through its workflow. So that was a feature I noticed. Another feature is an enhanced object-based assessment. So basically, as opposed to just targeting one object that you have, for risk assessment methodology within advanced risk, now you can actually target multiple objects. So I thought that was another big feature within Washington. And then the enhanced user experience within advanced risk. ServiceNow, it sounds like has done a lot of work around workspaces and different features and functionality, allowing you to collaborate on your risk assessment workflows, things like that, within advanced risk.
It's fascinating. It's interesting that you mentioned the ability to assess multiple objects at once, because there seems to be a direct correlation between the idea of continuous authorization and monitoring, which looks at the entity that it's assessing as a group of applications, servers, databases, architecture, the environment for an application to actually authorize. And I see a real capability down the road to use a multiple object risk assessment as part of the CAM process. And I'm looking forward to exploring that.
Yeah, no, that's great that you came up, I think, with an example of how it can be used. Because you're right, in terms of entity, mapping and entity scoping, have this idea that we could have like multiple, let's say 10 servers under, one entity. And companies often try to keep things a little bit, they try to make things simpler, right?
Yeah.
So as you said, kind of taking groups of entities and putting them under kind of one, overall entity, right? Really enables organizations to keep things a little bit more streamlined. And so, it's definitely, I think, a key feature coming out with the new release that I think clients can leverage.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Yep, very good.
Doug, thank you today for GlideFast Consulting's Integrated Risk Management Center of Excellence. I'm John Gilaspy. Have a great day.
Thanks, John.
Do you have a topic in mind that you'd like to discuss? Reach out to us at glidefast.com and subscribe to our podcast for new episodes. Thanks for listening.